And we're back. This is the QB Lab podcast. I'm your host, Jake, and beside me is my co host, Zach. We got a lot to talk about this week. Of course, it's the NFL playoffs. They are finally here. This show is dedicated to the greatest position in all of sports, the quarterback position. So, although we are going to be talking about round one of the NFL playoffs, the fight for the Lombardi, we are going to be talking a lot about quarterbacks and the quarterback matchups and which quarterback we think is going to win the game, that kind of stuff. So, before we get into this, as always, smash that subscribe button, hit that like button. We really need the support. We are growing slowly but surely. We are growing, but we need you to keep supporting us. So we're going to be covering round one. We're going to have lots more episodes to talk about playoffs. We got a ton of great content queued up. And I want to say, Zach and I have not talked about our picks at all. So we might be agreeing with everything. We might be disagreeing with everything. We might be somewhere in between. Zach, we got a lot to cover, though.
We do. And if we were smart, we would have been clickbaity and opposed each other's picks entirely. But I think
Not
that
us.
I think this first round, I could see it going a bunch of different ways, but I am curious to see what you come with, especially because the last episode we talked about our contenders and pretenders. I'm curious to see how well who we selected matches up with these first round matchups. But I'm excited to get right into it. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, I'm going to go from first game to last game. So we're starting with the Los Angeles Rams versus the Carolina Panthers. The Rams traveling to Carolina for this one. And it's an interesting matchup. Although I've questioned the Rams for a while because I really feel like they've had a lot of ups and downs. I don't think Stafford and the Rams have been the same team without Devontae Adams. And I think you and I have talked about this before, that they don't seem to be that same team. But I have them winning this one. I don't think the Panthers deserve to be in the playoffs, personally. I mean,
Adams is playing on in this game, by the way. He'll be back.
and the thing is, hurt, not hurt, he's playing. He's good enough to be playing. And even without Adams, though, I want to be clear here. I still think the Rams take this game. And we have to talk about the fact that the Panthers have no business being in the playoffs. They just simply do not deserve to be in the playoffs. Matthew Stafford will absolutely torch the Carolina Panthers on Saturday. I think it's going to be a bloodbath. I think Stafford is going to destroy the Panthers.
Yeah, this is going to be a multi-score lead, at least 10 points. That's probably the right place to for the line. But this game isn't going to be particularly close, in my opinion. I'm sure there are going to be a bunch of people who want to point out, hey, the Panthers beat the Rams in like week 13 or whatever week it was. That game was just full-blown chaos. And when we're talking about teams in the playoffs, chaos can kind of go here and there during the regular season, but what wins championships, what gets you deep into the playoffs is that consistency, it's that perseverance, it's that structured play that when the chips are down, you can rely on Stafford that has over a decade of experience against Bryce. This might be Bryce Young's first visit to the playoffs. I think it is. This is a guy that isn't even consistent from week to week. In 1 week, Ted McMillan can go off. And then next game, Ted McMillan can get 0 catches, and suddenly Jalen Coker is the hero. They're not even consistent in their running back play. Like Rico Dowdle had multiple games over 100 yards, and he should have been the guy here on out just because of their efficiency statistics. And suddenly, we're bringing in Chuba Hubbard. This Panthers team is a joke. They didn't even want to really make the playoffs. If they couldn't beat a Baker Mayfield Buccaneers team that was slipping in a post Liam Cohen world, what makes you think they're going to beat Matthew Stafford?
Yeah, I was taking a look here just to confirm. They had an under 500 record. So, to your point, you talk about inconsistency, Bryce Young's inconsistency throughout the season. He can't be trusted in the playoffs, especially against what I would deem as a good Rams team. Yes, they've had their ups and downs, but they are a good team. I think that a lot of people thought, including us, that they had a legitimate shot at the Super Bowl, which I still think that they do. And I think this is as easy of a road game as the Rams could have possibly asked for. We
Yeah,
got
now I think it would have been interesting. Like, I think what you and I are probably both thinking here is if the Rams had a harder first round matchup, with the lack of performance we've seen in these most recent weeks, things would be a lot closer. Like, for instance, if the first round matchup was Rams against the Bears, I think we'd be debating things quite a bit more here. Not that I feel like the Bears are particularly good per se, but I think we're in a situation where the Rams, we're gonna have to really think hard about them before we sort of stamp their ticket past this round.
speaking of an interesting matchup, Packers versus Bears. Regardless of what happens, that's an exciting matchup to have those two franchises against each other. Great rivalry. They've always had great games. It's in Chicago, so you got to figure you got to give some love to them. They've looked really good. I think their offense has been very, very steady. I know they got the third in rushing, 10th in pass. So they've been very impressive with Ben Johnson running the show there. And I personally, although I really don't like either of these teams in terms of seeing them succeeding in the playoffs and going to the Super Bowl, I don't see either of them being elite teams. I do think Caleb Williams is finally going to show that he's for real. Like, this guy is here. He is ready to go. He is going to take Jordan Love in this one. And I think we're going to see some great scrambles and some great off balance type throws from Caleb Williams. And he's gonna take it to the Packers.
I was with you until the very end. I I've got the Bears as a slight favorite in this one. I do think they're going to win this game, but I don't think it's going to be because of Caleb Williams. I don't think Caleb Williams is like suddenly going to have his first signature game of his
This
career
is the
that like I'm just
signature
like
game for him.
the only stat that Caleb Williams leads the NFL in is throwing the ball away. This isn't a guy where I'm just like, hey, this is all the confidence in the world, but I don't think he needs to show up in a major way for the Bears to win this game. I'm actually quite impressed with what Ben Johnson's doing in the run game. DeAndre Swift has been more than serviceable. Kyle Monangai runs like he's been shot out of a cannon, very similar to like the Isaiah Pacheco,
Yeah.
like good years when
Hard
he was just running
running,
he
plows
was
through
running like a
anything.
madman. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm a big fan of what this Bears offense does, and I like conceptually what this Bears defense does. Like this Bears defense, what they do is they just don't give up the big explosive play. And the problem with this Packers offense is I don't really buy their run game anymore. Like you've got Josh Jacobs there who isn't as effective now. And I would say he's not effective for two reasons. The first is Tucker Kraft got injured, which Tucker Kraft was a gigantic body that was effective at blocking and was breaking Josh Jacobs free. And the second piece, I think Josh Jacobs is significantly more injured than what the media is letting on here. When he does touch the ball, he is not at the same explosiveness. It seems like he just is diving into defensive players' arms, and his yards per carry isn't what it was. And Emmanuel Wilson, by the way, he's great. Like they'd probably be better off if they just had Josh Jacobs sit down because of how well Emmanuel Wilson has run the football. But they're not going to do that because Josh Jacobs is effectively leader in that organization. So if you're the Packers offense, then your big play threat there is going to be Christian Watson. That's the one guy they got to shut down. And the rest are going to be some of these seams and breaking routes. And as soon as we get to the fourth quarter, where the Bears are averaging 5.2 yards per average on some of these routes, I think it's going to be difficult for them over time to convert these third downs. And I think the Bears offense is just going to be a little bit more effective against the Packers defense than vice versa.
Yeah, not enough consistency from the Packers offense, not enough balance. I think especially when you enter the playoffs, when you have that lack of balance, it really gets tricky because these teams, that are in the playoffs outside of the Panthers are top tier teams. They're there for a reason and they're going to pick up on those kinds of things. And you're not going to get some of the openings that I think you hoped to get for Jordan Love. And I just don't think those are going to be open. I don't think those big shots for Jordan Love are going to be open. and we're gonna see a Bears win. So I think we agree on the fact that the Bears are gonna win, but the way they're gonna win, I don't think we agree on, because I do think Caleb Williams. This is Caleb Williams' signature game. This is where he makes his mark, where he goes, look, I'm here, I'm for real. Maybe I'm not elite yet, but I'm for real.
I'm not going to go that far. I'm going to say this is a game where Caleb doesn't turn the ball over and he just manages the game well enough to make sure that he's a team that turns the ball over less. And I think more importantly, I think this is the game where Jordan Love proves what I said last episode correct, that he is a pretender. And this is going to be the fodder for people to wonder why he got such a fat contract after one playoff win against the Cowboys.
Mm. On to what I would deem as the most exciting game: Bills versus Jaguars. The Buffalo Bills are heading down to Florida, northern Florida, taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are a good team, but and it's got to be noted here for how well they've played in terms of, they got the 8-game win streak. They got a great record, their third seed, et cetera, et cetera. They've beaten down on a lot of inferior opponents. And at the end of the day, you really, really need to focus on that. I was listening to the radio today, and they were talking about that. This is the perfect moment where you have to start to go, okay, great. All these teams have good records. Well, who have you actually played? Who have you actually beaten? How were your opponents? How was the schedule? And to me, the Jaguars are a perfect example of a team that's, yes, they've won a lot of games. Yes, they have a lot of great pieces, but they've also beaten a lot of bad teams that you should beat if you're even decent. So it doesn't tell me a whole lot, given the fact that they're a third seed, the Bills are the sixth seed. I don't look into that a whole lot. The whole being on the road, again, don't look into that a whole lot, especially because I think the good weather is actually probably advantageous to the Bills when you have Josh Allen, the reigning MVP, and you have a great run game with James Cook, rushing leader this year. I think that the good weather in Jacksonville actually helps the Bills more than it helps the Jaguars. So for me, I look at this and I go, Trevor Lawrence is a pretender. I've been saying it for a long time. Trevor Lawrence is not a contender. He is a pretender. And the reason he's a pretender is because he's not beating good teams. He's had a couple wins this year against good teams, but for the most part, he's beating bad teams. Statistically, not very impressive. Look at his passer rating. Look at his touchdown to interception ratio. I'm not seeing anything there that jumps off the page that tells me this is a quarterback I need to be afraid of. On the other side of the ball, we got a quarterback that you need to be terrified of, because Josh Allen, boy, oh boy, this guy is going to be running all over the Jaguars. I think everyone's been waiting to see, okay, Josh Allen, he's had some good moments this year, but hasn't truly had a lot of breakout moments. He's had a couple games, but outside of that, really not a lot of running from him in terms of yards. Of course, he's got the 14 rushing touchdowns, which is unbelievable, but you haven't seen a lot of consistent running from Josh. I think this is the week. Now we're in playoff time. It's take those chains off, take the shackles off, let Josh Allen do whatever he needs to do to win. I think he's going to run all over the Jaguars, and I think the Bills are going to win.
Okay. So here's my take on it. Okay. I think overall, the Jaguars are the better team. If this was a best of 7 series, I think I give the Jaguars a 4-3. Like, I'm calling Jags in 7. I think in this in this game, I think the Bills are going to win it, but they're not necessarily the better team. And I'll explain why. I think game script wise, it's going to be a classic Jaguars in the first half jump out to a bit of a lead. The Bills in the third quarter close the gap. It's going to come down to a couple of sequences in the fourth quarter where the Bills defense get the Jags to stall out on a possession. And then on the last sequence of the game, the Bills end up taking it. But I think there's a couple really important dynamics that we need to talk about here. Because if I'm strategizing for this game, if I'm Joe Brady, I think my biggest offensive advantage is James Cook. I think where I would be attacking the Jags is in the interior defensive lineman. I'd be drawing up more of these schemes where Gilliam and Hawes are breaking James Cook free, because the real advantage from this from this Jaguars defense, sorry, is that they kind of rely on these 12 to 14 play drives, and they do just enough to make the opponents make a mistake. And the difficulty here is if you have that many drives and you're saying, hey, Josh Allen, pass for 75 to 80% of those, I think that plays into the Jaguars' hands. But I think that if you're saying we're going to make these drives happen, we're on first down, we're going to get James Cook to give us 5 yards, we're going to convert these first downs quickly. I think that's how you break down this Jaguars defense, by making sure that you're really executing against the defense's weaknesses. And the other piece of it is, I feel like this applies to both teams, by the way. The run game, I think, is going to be the most stable part of both offenses. And I think the winner becomes the team that doesn't abandon the run first. I think that what's gone on with the Bills defense here is they've shown in the first half, hey, we really suck at guarding the run. And in the second half, the opposing offense just seems to forget about it. And I think what we've got to have happen here is, obviously Josh Allen is probably the best quarterback in the NFL, and you want the ball in his hands when it matters most. But if you make him do too much all game long and you burn some of your money making plays too early in the game, you really want to make sure you're exploiting the defense in the way that makes the most sense.
So you see this more as a really tight dogfight. I'm curious though. We do know this. The Jaguars' rush defense has been phenomenal this year. I think they've only given up an average of like 70 or 75 yards, but they've played a lot of bad teams. So, I think that anyone listening who immediately goes, "Oh, how could he say they just run the ball? Folks on the run, the Jags have such a great run D." Well, they've done that against not such great teams. They haven't played the Bills, who are the best rushing team. You have the best running back in the league. So I agree with you. And to the point of running James Cook, as much as you're suggesting, I'm curious to see what that does in the passing game, where we know the Bills have had some struggles with separation. I wonder that if the Bills are able to succeed, even in some regard, at running the ball with James Cook, does it open things up for some pass plays and some rollouts? And maybe again, to my point, Josh Allen gets more opportunities to run outside of the pocket, make some things happen because they're believing that James Cook's going to run the ball.
So the Jags have a good defensive line, and Liam Cohen's a genius. So what I imagine happens here is the coaching they'll end up giving them is that the edge rushers need to make sure the pocket kind of collapses Josh Allen in a way where he can't roll out left and right as easily as he usually does. But the other piece too is, I am willing to bet on the Bills O line in this against the Jags interior part of its defensive line, just by pointing to the game tape of what the Bills did against the Browns. When you have James Cook showing that level of awareness, and these combinations they're putting together with Gilliam at the fullback and with Hawes at the tight end, and just the creativity within the offensive line as well, putting Cook in a position to use his elite level awareness to find holes amongst, like, that Browns defense is not slacking whatsoever. A similar type of activity can definitely happen, for me at least, against this Jacksonville Jaguars defense. And then the other piece of it too is, when the chips are down and Josh Allen is in a place to improvise, that's obviously his massive advantage against Trevor Lawrence. Like, I view Trevor Lawrence as a guy that's just trying to stay even keel, trying to stay neutral, and make a couple good plays here and there. But I think that's going to be a lot harder to do if he finds himself in the game script where he's trailing from behind, or when he's facing this Bills pass defense that's been elite these past couple of weeks. I don't think it's going to be super easy for Trevor Lawrence either. And again, overall, I do think the Jaguars are the better team, but that's the beauty of NFL playoff football. It's one game, and I think in this game, I'm putting my money behind the Buffalo Bills to take it.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, it's really hard to bet against an elite quarterback versus a quarterback who we really don't know what you're getting. And to your point, when the chips fall and you got a tight game and you need a big play, who are you going to trust more, Josh Allen or Trevor Lawrence? And I think anyone would agree that Josh Allen's the guy to go with, even if his team isn't quite as complete as the Jaguars. Now, we got 49ers versus the Eagles. This is a really interesting matchup because you have the Eagles, who have been a great team for quite a few years now. You have a quarterback who we're on the fence about. We've said he's great. We've said he's not. Some moments I think, you got to go Jalen Hurts. He's a winner. He's got the winning DNA. But then on the flip side, I mean, he's really not looked particularly good this year. The Eagles' offense have really struggled. I think it's their defense that's really kept them alive for most of the season. Their running game hasn't been the same. Jalen Hurts doesn't look like the same guy when he doesn't have the type of support that he's needed in the past, Saquon Barkley, etc. For me, I like the 49ers in this one. And talking about quarterbacks that are relevant, irrelevant, who's the guy who deserves the starting position? Is it Mac Jones, who, stepped in for a few games? Zach and I have talked about this before, but I flipped, man. Purdy is Mr. Relevant. He is going to be Mr. Relevant this week because he is going to take on the Philadelphia Eagles defense, and he's going to win this game. I think Purdy and the Niners are pulling out a win. They're, I would say, a pretty hot team as of late. I think Purdy's coming on. He's getting his rhythm. And I like the Niners in a tough matchup, but I like the Niners over the Eagles. I really, really just think the Eagles think the instead of the eagle has landed, is landed in a bed to fall asleep. I think the Eagles have hit bottom, and I don't think this is the year that they're gonna fly through the playoffs. No, Eagles fly, 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 Eagles fly. Not happening today.
Okay, Jake. I hate to be opposing your pick. It's the
Whoa.
first time. It's the first time in this episode. I think this is an Eagles win, and I don't think it's going to be particularly hard. Um, there's a couple different factors here. Now, what I will do is I'll concede. I like Purdy a heck of a lot more than I like Hurts right now. Purdy's been playing out of his mind these past 3 to 4 weeks, and you know what? I love, like, there's some highlight level plays where you want to go in and believe that Purdy's taking that next step up, like that scramble to the left where he goes forward, avoids one defender, comes back, and then throws that ball to a use check. That's what I would love to see Caleb Williams doing. Although Caleb Williams, when he's in that position, he just throws the ball away. It makes no sense. But I think the difficulty that I'm seeing here is that the Philadelphia Eagles defense seems to me uniquely positioned to stop Brock Purdy and the San Francisco offense. Because I think a big part of the San Francisco 49ers success to this point is their ability to throw over the middle of the field and create like these yak driven plays where these like hooks in the middle of the field and then get like 12 yards here and there. And the problem is against this Philadelphia Eagles defense, their set pieces on a one-on-one basis is just significantly better than most of the competition that the 49ers faced most of the season. And the other piece of it too is if you look at Brock Purdy's data, the second he's under pressure, his data falls sharply. And I do think Jalen Carter and the rest of this defensive line, they're going to get to Brock Purdy more than a lot of the other competition they've seen over the course of the season. Now, I'm not going to discredit your point at all. I don't like what Hurts is doing. It seems like there's some weird rift behind the scenes between Hurts and A.J. Brown. I think Devontae Smith should get used more, but I like Dallas Goedert as a safety valve. But I think the thing that we have to really talk about here is this 49ers defense is atrocious with all their injuries, and Saquon, they've kind of been saving him for this moment.
So if you're telling me, have they been saving him?
Of course.
Or is he a step older? He's a year older,
Saquon suddenly forgot how to play football? No, like Saquon is an absolute horse. He can break out a big time play whenever he wants. And then you're saying you're against this 49ers defense that is so banged up, so injured. I just don't see how this is reasonable competition for the Philadelphia Eagles. And I just think it's going to be a situation where the Philadelphia Eagles have enough of an advantage that this 49ers offense, I think it's the end of a Cinderella run, and that this Shanahan offense is uniquely positioned to get stopped by just the strength on a man-to-man basis that this Philadelphia Eagles defense brings.
Maybe San Fran's finally going to meet their match. Yeah, because their offense has looked unbelievable, like shot out of a cannon. And it's hard because Purdy really has looked so exciting. Like he's looked like he could be, someone that carries this Niners team through the playoffs. Like he really looks like it. But again, to your point, that the defense is a problem. I mean, it's an interesting matchup because I think you have an Eagles team that has a struggling offense, a Niners team that has a great offense, Eagles defense that's great, Niners defense that's struggling big time. So, yeah, it's
Let
gonna
me put it
it's
this way,
gonna be
though. I'd
interesting.
I'd be more willing to buy your argument if I didn't just see the Seahawks defense shut down Brock Purdy. The fact that they did it so effectively, I do think that the Eagles coaches just play that game tape for their set pieces, and that they're going to learn enough to be able to get a W out of this one.
The only thing I would just note with that is divisional opponents tend to go a little slightly differently. They tend to be a little more accustomed to each other. But yeah, like there's no question that Seattle was able to give them a good run, although Seattle is unbelievable. I mean, I'd be hard pressed to find many
Yeah,
teams
is
that are much
Darnold a
better.
contender? Are you
He's still
finally
a contender.
listening to me?
No, I can't wait for Seattle to have their first game of the season, first game of the postseason, and for Darnold to just totally collapse. I can't wait for the world to see and understand that I've been right this whole time, that Darnold
Jake,
has been
you
wearing
got to
a
give him his
mask all
flowers.
season.
He has back-to-back seasons with two different teams
Doesn't
with
matter.
14 wins, and he can't collapse in the first round of the playoffs if he's not playing in
But
them.
he could
He's dodging
collapse
you
in the
entirely.
second round of the playoffs.
We'll see.
Yeah, look, we'll be discussing more of Darnold at a later date.
Oh, and by the way, like I'm actually like not that committed to the Seahawks. I could very easily pick their opponent next week. To be
for
like,
sure.
I'm not. I'm just giving you.
Yeah, because
Uh,
Darnold, of course, you're not sure about them. No one's sure about them. It's Sam Darnold. Like, do you forget how he looked on the Jets back in the day? He's not all of a sudden a new guy. You know who was like Sam Darnold a couple years ago? Who everyone's like, oh, he might actually be good. Geno fucking Smith. Where's he now? Yeah,
yeah, those are different situations entirely. But we can move on.
you're right. They were both drafted by the Jets.
You know. Okay. Anyway, we can keep going from this one, but
Chargers, Patriots. This is an interesting one. I think a lot of people are wondering what's going to happen here because you have a ton of people that fully believe in the Patriots, that they're the real deal, that they're the team of the AFC. I've heard that on multiple occasions now. And you have the Chargers who have looked really good all year and have been in a very, very tough division and have managed to get out of there relatively unscathed. I mean, they still made the playoffs. Yes, they're the 7th seed, but the Chargers have looked dangerous defensively, offensively. You got Justin Herbert, who's had a heck of a season, I think quite quietly, actually. I don't think there's been enough talk about him personally and his girlfriend. But the to me, the story of this game, there's actually two stories here. Hence, they're obviously quarterback related. Story number one, the Chargers defense is going to be too much for Drake May. I think we're finally going to see what we thought was possible. And we've talked about this. Drake May doesn't have the signature game. Great stats. Easiest schedule. One of the easiest. I think they've actually said statistically, the Patriots have had the easiest schedule for any NFL team to make the playoffs in like 30 years. It's something ridiculous. And that to me is enough of a storyline to say, hey, look, Drake May is going to meet his match against the Chargers. He's going to have a tough go. He's not going to be awful by any means, but he's going to struggle. There's going to be pressure, and this time he's not going to be able to handle the pressure. That's story number one. Storyline number two, arguably more important. Drake May is not ready yet for that step to go through the playoffs. It's not just the Chargers. It's Drake May isn't ready. He's a little young. He's still got a ways to go. He's just not ready. And then I
Okay, I have two
actually
questions for
have
you.
one third storyline. Third storyline. Herbert is going to enter elite status because over and over again, we talk about doesn't have the winning DNA. I've been ragging on him all season. But when you enter the postseason, this is your opportunity to prove that, hey, I'm worth it, man. I'm the franchise guy, and I'm not just a seasoned player. I think this is where we finally see that. I think the Chargers win this game, and I think it's because their defense handles Drake May, puts a ton of pressure on him, and he can't handle it. Not ready yet. And that Herbert is entering elite status. This is where he goes off, where he shows that he's for real. He's the guy. He's got the winning DNA in him that everyone has been questioning. This is the week for him to do it.
Okay. You answered one of my two questions. The second one, who's your MVP?
In this game or in the season?
No. Because there's a lot going on right now of Drake May versus Matthew Stafford for MVP. Who do you have?
It's a really tough question. I honestly hadn't thought about who I was going to give it to. It's so tricky. I think you have to go Matt Stafford, personally.
I do too.
I
I
think
don't think it's particularly close. It's been blowing up though on socials lately of people trying to defend Drake May here.
well,
Look,
because he's had a great season, but to the point that I said, the schedule, the lack of the signature again, and honestly, if he would have beaten the Buffalo Bills in that game where they were up 21 points, I think there's a solid argument to give it to Drake May. They probably would have ended up potentially with the first seed. I don't know exactly how it would have laid out potentially, but he lost that game, and he lost it brutally to Josh Allen, the reigning MVP. To me, that was very clear in that game that Drake May is not the guy quite yet. He might become, but he's not the MVP this year. I don't think he can be.
so I love the take of New England falling apart just because it's fun, it's entertaining, it's great. I think the lower risk, like I do think the New England Patriots are more fraudulent than what their record shows. But I just can't bet on this Chargers team to beat the Patriots because I think the biggest liability on all four sides of the ball here is the offensive line that's defending Justin Herbert.
But he's handled it. He's handled the pressure.
He has, but you know as well as me that in the playoffs, these high ceiling teams that aren't consistent and are just relying on
Doesn't
big
work
plays to
always.
try to make things happen, it's just not the safer thing to bet on. Now, I agree with all your points. I think that the Patriots themselves are highly overvalued here. I'm just thinking that in a playoff environment against like a well coached, like I think Mike Vrabel's done a ton, but I think you got to give Josh McDaniels his flowers because what he's done to do what he can to get Drake May to do this massive step forward. I don't think he's getting enough credit right now. I think that Drake May is going to come into this prepared. I could see like the more volatile parts of this offense, like Stephon Diggs and these giant Trevion Henderson. I could see those being harder to come by, but I still think the biggest liability in every scenario here is the fact that Justin Herbert is just going to be under so much duress. And I think the Patriots defense knows that this run game that the Chargers have is really just there in name only. It's not anything that's generating much. And that the success will be just shutting down some of these big plays. So if they just keep everything in front of them, I think Drake May is going to at least be in a position to win the ball game.
We would be remiss if we didn't at least bring up the Stephon Diggs stuff. You know, the allegations.
Oh my
Does
God.
that make a difference here?
Uh,
And I know they always players would say, "Oh, it doesn't matter. We're not talking about it. We're just focusing on the game." You gotta believe there has to be something in the locker room with that stuff swirling. It can't possibly be a good thing with that looming over the team, knowing that his date in court or whatever is in just a few weeks. Does that not affect this at all? Does it come to play? Is he slightly less focused? Like without Diggs, this offense, like however much credit we want to give Drake May and quarterbacks in general, this offense just doesn't roll without Stephon Diggs.
Yeah, I've got a fun stat for you. The Las Vegas Raiders have less wins this season than Diggs has brought babies into the world. This, like, if that itself wasn't enough, and one of those babies is a celebrity baby. If
Yeah.
that wasn't enough to like derail the team already, I don't think that these allegations are really going to do all that much to it. I think that this is one where even just like I don't think one wide receiver has that kind of power in this locker room where you got Mike Vrabel as the head coach. Like I just think there's enough going on for them culturally that they will be able to block out the noise. Now, do I think this is a Super Bowl winning team? I guess they could win it, but I don't think it's the highest probability in the world. But I do think that's going to be more of a factor for later rounds. In this one, unfortunately, they're just lucky enough that they're the 2 seed against a 7 seed that just has a couple glaring holes. I just don't see correcting enough to be able to win that game.
Now, speaking about drama and what's going on in the locker room and all that other stuff, you got the Texans versus the Steelers. They get DK Metcalf back, who
Do they?
he wasn't having allegations though. He just fucking attacked the guy
I
and
mean, it's
was
not an
suspended
allegation
for
if it's
2
on
games.
if it's caught in
Correct.
4K in an NFL
It was
stadium.
very clear.
Yeah.
But he's back. That does change the Steelers offense, I think, significantly. However, well, I mean, their offense does look very different with DK Metcalf versus not having. There's no question.
Yeah, but Aaron Rodgers is still like last in the league in terms of average depth of targets. So like he's the guy that's
And
supposed to be spreading the offense, but doesn't change the dinking and dunking we're seeing.
and another team here that squeaked into the playoffs, by almost basically a miracle. They squeak out a game against the Ravens to make it. They stumble into the playoffs. They do have home advantage, but to me, and you talked about this the other week, you have the 5th best player in the AFC or 4th best. I forgot how you ranked it, but the Texans defense. This Texans defense is going to be too much for Rodgers. Rodgers can't handle the Texans. There's just no way that with his lack of mobility that he's going to be able to handle anywhere near the kind of pressure the Texans are going to be bringing. They don't have anywhere near the type of talent in their run game that they can really stop the Texans from just pinning their ears back and attacking Rodgers. And I don't really think a whole lot needs to be talked about CJ Stroud. He's not looked good this year. I don't think he's going to be a factor at all. I mean, he'll have a fine game. I'm sure he'll make some plays, but I wouldn't be afraid of CJ Stroud in this game by any standard. But I do
No,
think Rodgers is going to struggle mightily with the Texans, and the
I have a
Texans are
prediction
taking
for
this
this
game.
game. I think the highest scoring individual player in this game is going to be Kaimi Fairbairn. I think he's going to have a prolific day at the office. I think that this one, there's just a couple key stats that I think make this matchup really clear as to what we're going to get. The Houston Texans defense, they're getting a pressure rate at like about 40%. And when Aaron Rodgers is under pressure, the Steelers' yards per play is 28th in the NFL. This is a guy that, because he's not mobile enough to handle pressure, as long as the Texans do enough to get rid of the first like look or two, it's going to be very difficult for Aaron Rodgers to do what he wants to do. And this is despite a Houston Texans offense that I think is laughably bad. I think they're going to do enough to get in the field goal position. I think Kaimi Fairbairn is going to rip a couple through, and they're going to go on to the next round of the playoffs.
Yeah, very fair. I think Kaimi Fairbairn over under 6 field goals. What are we doing here? Over 6?
I think it's 6. I'd
6
be
field goals right
betting
on the dot.
specifically 6.
Right on the dot. Okay, yeah, I think that's fair. Well, look, This was an amazing, amazing episode. It's great to cover the first round. We got all of our picks. It sounds like we're not agreeing on two, right? I got the Chargers and the Niners. You got the Eagles, the Patriots. So I think Sunday is going to be an interesting day for us to see who wins their bets, right? So appreciate it. If you've listened this long, you have to subscribe. I mean, come on. You can't listen to this entire episode and be pumped for the NFL playoffs and not subscribe and smash that like button. I mean, come on. You got to just hammer those. So appreciate it. We are the QB Lab podcast.